Some nights you sleep harder than others. Other nights the walls whisper. That night I was somewhere in between. My back ached like always, and the ache kept me hovering between sleep and wake. It was close to 2 a.m., and the house was quiet. Quiet in that way that makes you notice every breath, every tick of the hallway clock, every change in the air. That's when I heard it. The door didn't open loud, just a gentle click. But this wasn't the wind. The carpet outside my bedroom doesn't creak unless you step too close to the corner. The third step. Someone knew that, because whoever was coming in had been here long enough to memorize the sound map of this house. I didn't stir. I didn't speak. It had happened before. Someone quietly checking in, maybe my son thinking I'd fallen asleep with the lamp on again. But this time it wasn't him. This time it was her. Leah, my daughter-in-law. She moved like someone doing something they weren't proud of. No light, no greeting, no cough or shuffle or pretense. Just soft, measured steps. And the drawer. She opened it carefully. The second one, deep under the bed where the cedar lining still clung faintly to old perfume. That drawer hadn't been opened in months. Not since I'd packed away the winter scarves and other things. I heard her pause. Then came the zipper. I know that zipper. The little travel pouch. Blue leather. Used to hold spare keys, emergency cash. One of those portable chargers my grandson gave me that I never used. Nothing valuable. Nothing flashy. Or so I thought. Because when Leah opened it, she gasped. Not a loud one. Just sharp. Quick. Like she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to. Or maybe something she recognized. And then everything stopped. No rifling. No rummaging. Only silence. I stayed still under the covers, heart pounding in that confused, elderly way. Half anger, half fear, all adrenaline. I didn't understand what she could have found. I didn't remember putting anything strange in there. After what felt like forever, she zipped the pouch again. Closed the drawer. Backed away with care. The door closed softly. And that was it. No confrontation. No flick of a light switch. She left like a ghost. The next morning, she was already dressed when I came into the kitchen. A navy blouse, one I hadn't seen before. Gold earrings that weren't her usual pair. She looked like someone going to a meeting she hadn't told anyone about. She poured me tea like always, with that soft little smile. "Morning, Mom," she said. Her voice was too cheerful. I nodded and took the cup. No mention of the night before. Of course not. I sat at the table, watching her from behind my mug. Something in her eyes darted too quickly when I looked up. Something was off. "Anything you need today?" she asked, like she always did. "Errands? Groceries?" "No, dear. I think I'm fine." But I wasn't. I had questions. Not just about what she was doing in my room, but about what exactly she thought she saw. Because that pouch? I hadn't touched it since last year. Not since before the fall. Not since I'd been in the hospital. Not since Leah and my son had moved in. And suddenly, the memory of what I used to keep in that drawer began to stir, like something buried waking up. It was supposed to be gone. But maybe I had forgotten something. Something she found. Something she wasn't supposed to. Leah poured my tea a little differently that morning. She usually sets the mug down with both hands, careful not to spill. But today she placed it fast, almost too fast, and smiled like she had somewhere else to be. "You sure you're not feeling off, Mom?" she asked, watching me sip. "I'm all right," I said, though the tea tasted faintly metallic, like the spoon hadn't rinsed clean. She watched me drink the whole cup. Then she busied herself at the sink, even though there was nothing to wash. Wiping the counter again. Rearranging the fruit bowl. I sat there a little longer than usual. She kept checking the clock on the wall, not even pretending to be casual about it. Something was happening. Not something loud. Not something obvious. But something. When Brian came down, he seemed his usual self. Hair, still damp from the shower. Shirt wrinkled at the sleeves. He kissed Leah on the cheek, muttered something about traffic, and asked me if I'd seen his car keys. "I think you left them on the entryway table," I said. "Oh, right." He left the room. Leah turned to me quickly. "You remember that?" I nodded. "I do have good days." She laughed nervously. After they left for work, I cleaned the kitchen like I always do, slowly taking my time, not because I enjoy it, but because it's one of the few things left I feel in control of. Then I went to my room. The drawer looked untouched, exactly as I'd left it. But when I opened it and reached for the pouch, it was heavier than I remembered. Full, but not in the same way. The charger was still there. Some coins, a paper clip, a stray cough drop. But one thing was missing. The note. A small folded piece of paper I had slipped inside months ago, back when I was still sorting through James's things. It wasn't a big deal. Just a quick note I'd jotted down and forgotten to throw away. My handwriting, barely legible now, with a list of places he wanted us to visit before the cancer came back. Canada, Portland, a cabin in the Smokies. Gone. Nothing else. Just that. I stared at the pouch for a long time. Why would she take that? It didn't make sense. There were no account numbers in it. No passwords. No legal instructions. Just names of places and a man's unfinished dreams. Unless she thought it meant something. I zipped it back up. I didn't know whether to be angry or confused or embarrassed that I couldn't remember where I'd last seen the safe key. Maybe it really had been in there. Maybe she had taken it. Or maybe I'd just lost more than I thought in the last few months. After all, it's not just memory that slips when you get older. It's certainty. You begin to doubt yourself. Was I right? Did I move it? Did I ever put it there? And in that doubt, other people make themselves comfortable. Later that afternoon, Leah came home alone. Brian had texted saying he'd be late, something about a team dinner. Leah smiled like nothing had happened, but I noticed her fingertips were red like she'd been fidgeting with something, tapping or folding or peeling. "Want to watch a movie tonight?" she asked. I hesitated. "Sure." We settled on the couch. She sat beside me, closer than usual. Midway through the film, I caught her glance at me, then down at her lap, where her phone screen glowed briefly. Just a quick text. I pretended not to see. By the time the movie ended, I was tired, but not from the plot. From the pretending. From not knowing what she saw, or why she looked so relieved now. As though something had finally clicked into place for her. I went to bed early. She said, "Good night," kissed me on the cheek. Her lips were cold. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Not because I was scared, but because a strange thought kept circling my brain like a moth near a lamp. What if the thing she saw was something I didn't mean to leave behind? The next morning, Leah didn't pour my tea. She placed everything on the table, mug, kettle, spoon, sugar, and sat across from me like she was waiting for a conversation we hadn't agreed to have. I was thinking, she said, tearing a croissant into neat halves. Maybe it's time we helped you get more organized. I stirred my tea, keeping my eyes on the swirling sugar. Just in case anything ever happens. God forbid. That last part was tossed in like a napkin, meant to soften the edge, as if the words hadn't already landed. I said nothing. Leah smiled again. Brian and I were reading about estate planning. Do you know how many people leave things in chaos? So sad. She reached into her bag. My stomach twisted before I even saw what she pulled out. A stack of papers. Clean white new. No creases, no coffee stains, no courtroom stamps. But the kind of weight you can feel in your bones. Just templates, she said casually, for power of attorney, medical directive. Stuff you probably already have, but it's good to have backups. She slid them across the table. Her fingernails were painted pale pink, the same shade she wore at her wedding. I stared at the top page. There it was, my name, spelled correctly, printed in a bold font that made it look like a warning label. Margaret Lowell. "I'll take a look," I said finally. She nodded like she'd just solved something. "Oh, and we can have Brian look at it later too. He's really good with this stuff." Brian. My son. The one who once cried at his 8th grade spelling bee when he forgot the second R in embarrass. The same boy who, just 2 weeks ago, asked me if I still had his baby blanket somewhere in the attic. He'd never pushed me. But Leah? She didn't need to push. She was leading. And Brian was just following. After she left for her yoga class, I stayed at the kitchen table a long time. I read every page, slowly. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. Everything looked harmless. Everything was suggested. Nothing was forced. But it was all angled. like the fine print had been rewritten by someone smiling too wide. Later that day, I walked to the mailbox. My knees protested, but I needed the air, needed something real. There was only one letter, a small cream envelope, no return address, just my name handwritten in blue ink. Inside was a single photo, old, black and white. I hadn't seen it in years. James and I, standing in front of the cabin in North Carolina. One of the places from the list. The same list from the note that went missing. I blinked at it, heart stuttering. How? Why? I looked around, half expecting someone to pop out and say it was a mistake, a prank. But the street was still. Just wind and trees, and the faint hum of a lawnmower 2 houses down. I took the photo inside, sat on the edge of the bed. I flipped it over. On the back, scribbled in what looked like my own handwriting, but wasn't, were the words. We never made it, but he wanted you to go. Maybe now's the time. My skin went cold. That handwriting. It was close, but not mine. It was trying to be mine. That night, Leah made dinner, lasagna from a frozen tray, but she plated it like she'd slaved over it for hours. She poured me a glass of wine I didn't ask for, kept glancing at my expression like she was waiting for a reaction. I gave her none. Brian was cheerful as always, but even he seemed edited, less spontaneous, like the air in the room had changed and he hadn't realized why. When I went to bed, I checked the drawer again. The pouch was still there, but now it was zipped backward. I always zip from right to left. This one was left to right. Small detail, but details are what build trust, and what break it. I sat on the edge of the bed a long time that night, holding that photo, feeling the weight of something just outside my grasp. Whatever Leah saw in that drawer, it had given her confidence. It made her feel close enough to the finish line to start drawing up papers and scripting goodbyes. But I still didn't know what she'd seen, and I had no idea how far she was willing to go to get what she thought was hers. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen table. It was written in Leah's cursive, sharp, slanted, like she was always trying to finish her sentences before you could argue. Gone to look at that cabin we talked about back before James got sick. Thought it might be nice to take a short trip. Fresh air is good for everyone. At the bottom, a heart drawn in blue pen. I stared at it for a long time. We had never talked about that cabin. Not once. She must have pieced it together from the photo. Maybe the old list. Maybe she'd overheard James and me once, years ago, reminiscing. But this rewriting of memory into a shared idea, it made my stomach curl. Like someone rearranging furniture in your house and acting like it was always theirs. Later that day, I walked past the guest room. The door was ajar. Something told me to stop. Inside, her overnight bag was already packed. Shoes lined up by the bed. A sweater of mine, folded neatly on top of her things, like she'd borrowed it long ago. There was something unsettling about how at home she seemed. I closed the door quietly and moved on. After lunch, she reappeared chipper. She had a brochure in hand, printed in color, and already dog-eared like she'd thumbed through it a dozen times. On the front, a rental cabin up in Asheville, North Carolina. Secluded, peaceful, perfect for slowing down. She handed it to me like it was a gift. I thought maybe just the 2 of us could go for a few days, she said. My mouth went dry. She smiled too easily. Brian's got that conference next weekend, right? You and I never get real time alone. I blinked, trying to find the right polite refusal. But she'd already taken my silence as agreement. It's all booked, she added, brushing imaginary lint from her sleeve. I wanted it to be a surprise. She touched my shoulder gently, like someone handling something fragile they don't quite respect. That night, I sat in my room with the lights off. My calendar lay open on my lap. I hadn't written much in it lately, just doctor appointments and grocery reminders. But something caught my eye. A note scribbled next to next Saturday's date. Pickup package. 3 p.m. L's initials? I hadn't written that, and I certainly wouldn't abbreviate Leah's name like that. Suddenly the room felt colder. Someone had gone through my calendar, written in it, left a breadcrumb, either by accident or arrogance. I closed the book and placed it back in the drawer. I needed sleep, real sleep, but just before I turned in, I walked to the bathroom, brushing my teeth slow, staring at my reflection. It looked tired, a little thinner, a little more worn around the edges. But the eyes? They were awake now. Back in bed, I heard Leah's voice drifting from downstairs. She was on the phone with someone. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught enough. Won't be a problem. Already halfway there. She trusts me. I lay down again, flat on my back. Still, I didn't know what she wanted. Not really. I didn't know if it was the house, the savings, the safety deposit box James never told her about. But I knew this. She thought she'd won me over. She thought whatever she found in that drawer was the missing piece. What if it was? What if I really had left behind something she shouldn't have seen? And what would she do? Once she thought I was out of the way. It was the kind of place you don't find by accident. Miles up a winding gravel road, no cell signal, no neighbors, just endless trees and a silence that made your thoughts feel too loud. I hadn't been in a cabin in years, but this one didn't smell like wood and pine like they used to. It smelled faintly of bleach and air freshener. Too clean, too new. Leah smiled like she belonged there. "We'll just relax," she chirped, unlocking the door and holding it open like some polite hotel manager. No expectations. No stress. I stepped in slowly, the old wood floors creaking under my feet. The main room had a fireplace, a single couch, and a kitchen that looked barely used. Everything felt prepared. She carried in her bags, 2 of them and mine, which she'd packed for me without asking. Said she didn't want me to worry. The first red flag. She opened a bottle of wine before we'd even unpacked, poured 2 glasses, and set one in front of me. "To new memories," she said, raising hers. I raised mine but didn't drink. She didn't notice, or pretended not to. The hours dragged in strange silence. She kept checking her phone despite the no service symbol glaring back at her. She fidgeted with her bracelet, her ring. She asked twice if I wanted to take a nap. I said I was fine. In the afternoon, she offered to make lunch. I sat by the window, watching the wind move the trees. When she called me to eat, I noticed her eyes flick to the wine glass. Mine still untouched. She didn't say anything. Over grilled cheese and soup, she started talking about James again, how much he'd loved the mountains, how he would have liked this place. She said it like she had known him well, though they'd only met twice before he passed. She watched me for signs. Any signs of trust, of sleepiness, of weakness. I gave her none. By nightfall, she suggested we play cards. I agreed. We sat across the table with a worn deck she'd brought from home. Her hands were calm, but her eyes kept darting to the clock. It was nearly 9 when she stood suddenly. "Oh," she said. "Almost forgot. I left a bag in the car. Be right back." She grabbed the keys and slipped out the door. It took me exactly 5 seconds to move. I went to her bag. I shouldn't have, but I did, and what I found stopped my breath. Inside a side pocket was a folder, manila, sealed with a rubber band. I opened it with shaking fingers. Inside, printed bank statements. Mine. Letters from my doctor's office. A draft of a power of attorney document I hadn't signed, but my signature had been traced, badly. And tucked at the bottom, the photo of James and me at the cabin. The one someone had mailed to me days ago. She'd taken it back, and now she had it here. The door creaked again, fast. I shoved everything back, zipped the bag, and returned to my seat just as she came back in with a flashlight and a fake apology. "Couldn't find it," she said, holding up the flashlight like it was a prize. "But hey, look what I did find. Could come in handy if the lights go out." She smiled. I nodded. She poured more wine. This time, she watched me drink. I sipped slowly, just enough to keep the questions away. The fire crackled. The wind howled. And the night pressed in like a closed fist. When I finally said I was tired, she looked relieved. "Good idea," she said. "Long day. I'll clean up here." I climbed the stairs. My hands trembled, not from age. From what I now knew. From what I still didn't. What was the package she had to pick up? Who was she talking to that night on the phone? And what was she waiting for out here, so far from anyone who could help? I lay in the narrow cabin bed, staring at the wooden beams above me, hearing every step she took below, every creak of the floorboards. Sleep didn't come, but morning would, and I had a feeling Leah wouldn't be ready for what was coming with it. The cabin was colder in the morning than I expected, the kind of cold that settles in your bones. I sat at the table by the window, wrapped in a blanket Leah had left out the night before, folded too neatly like a hotel towel. My tea untouched again. Her wine bottle still on the counter. Empty now. She came down late, claiming she hadn't slept well. Her hair was brushed, makeup lightly done, but her smile was tight, rehearsed, like someone backstage waiting for a cue. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, just a bit tired. She brought out toast, overly buttered, and sat across from me. "You ever think about what'll happen, after?" I looked at her. "After what?" "You know." She laughed lightly, like if you ever, got too tired to keep doing everything alone. She said tired, like it meant useless, like it meant ready to be handed over. I chewed slowly, keeping my face neutral, but something flickered behind her eyes, like she was checking off a mental list. Around noon, she said she was going to get fresh air. That's when I made the call. I'd kept the backup phone tucked in the lining of my coat pocket, an old model Emma had given me before she moved away. "In case they start treating you like decoration," she'd said with a wink. I dialed. Emma picked up on the first ring. "You're safe?" she asked immediately. "I'm fine," I said, "but it's today." "Got it. I'll be there by 2:30. They won't know I'm coming." I hung up. Then I waited. Leah came back half an hour later, cheeks pink from the cold. Said she'd found a scenic overlook nearby and wanted to drive me there after lunch. "It's peaceful," she said, too cheerful. "You'll love it." I told her I'd lie down first. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed, my fingers pressed against my knees. I thought about James, about his last week when the hospice nurse said something I never forgot. Sometimes people hang on longer than we expect, especially when they know something's unfinished. I hadn't known what that meant then. I did now. When I came back downstairs, Leah was on the phone again, hushed tones, walking quickly into the kitchen when she saw me. She ended the call mid-sentence. "Everything all right?" I asked, my voice as casual as morning toast. "Yep," she said too fast. "Just confirming our check out. We just got here." She blinked. "Well, I thought maybe we'd head back tonight. Beat the weather." I nodded slowly. Then a knock on the cabin door. Sharp. Firm. Leah's whole body froze. She looked at me, then back toward the sound. Another knock. Then "Mrs. Lowell?" "It's Detective Sanders, Buncombe County." "May I speak with you?" Leah's face turned pale. "Detective," she said, trying to smile. "What's going on?" I didn't answer her. I walked to the door, opened it, and there stood Emma, wearing a badge and a windbreaker that read North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. Leah's mouth parted. "You're a cop." Emma stepped in slowly. "Actually, I'm a licensed investigator working on elder financial exploitation cases. The tip we received involved forged signatures, stolen personal documents, and possible attempts at medical fraud." She turned to me. "You ready to hand it over?" I nodded and reached into my pocket, pulled out the manila folder. Not her folder. Mine. The real one. The one Leah thought she'd found back in the house. The one I'd swapped out months ago, right after I noticed someone going through my things. Emma flipped it open. Originals. Notarized records. Photos of the safe. The real estate documents James and I had never filed because we'd planned to keep the cabin for retirement. A power of attorney, all right, but one signed by me months ago, giving Emma full authority if I became incapacitated. Leah backed away slowly. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "I didn't." Emma cut her off. "We traced the call you made to your brother last week," she said calmly. "The one where you said you'd be bringing it back signed or not at all. We also retrieved the doctored letter you slipped into Margaret's mailbox. Nice try, by the way, but your handwriting slants left, not right." Leah blinked. Tried to speak. Couldn't. I turned to her, and for the first time I let my expression drop the warmth I'd been wearing all week. "I know what you saw in that drawer, Leah," I said. "You thought it was a key to a new life. But what you really saw was bait." Her eyes widened. "You knew." I nodded. "And you played along?" "I had to be sure," I said. "And now I am." Emma took a step forward. You're not under arrest yet, but you'll be coming with me. We've got questions, and depending on your answers, the charges will write themselves." Leah looked like she wanted to collapse. No cabin trip. No quiet signature. Just truth. Ugly, bright, and long overdue. As she was escorted out, I finally took a deep breath. And for the first time in weeks, I exhaled.